Episode 1, The Sound Under the Floorboards. They say the devil keeps his promises. At 3:33 a.m., Sister Magdalena found out the hard way. The convent of St. Amarantha stood like a dying prayer on the edge of a crumbling cliffside in northern Italy. The walls were heavy with silence, and the air smelled like cold stone and old incense. That night, it was raining, kind of rain that doesn't cleanse but reminds you something is wrong, and the bells didn't ring for matins. I was the youngest in the order, barely 22, the kind who still flinched at thunder and whispered Hail Marys into her pillow. But that night, something deeper than fear crept into me. A sound woke me up, a dragging, scraping sound beneath the wooden floor of our dormitory. It was exactly 3:33 a.m. The second I turned to the clock, I heard her. I screamed it from a throat, but from a soul. It came from Sister Magdalena's cell. We found her body twisted on the floor, eyes wide open, mouth contorted in something between a prayer and a curse. Blood had pooled in a circle beneath her knees, as if she'd been kneeling when it happened. But no wounds, no cause. The priest said it was her heart, but the body told a different story. No bruises, no cuts, just the frowning expression of unspeakable terror. We buried her the next morning, but that night, at exactly 3:33, her scream returned. Not from her cell, from under the floorboards. The older nuns tried to explain it away. Gas leaks, nightmares, the devil playing tricks. But I saw the way. Mother Louisa's hands trembled as she blessed the room. I saw how no one dared enter the chapel alone anymore. And I saw Sister Magdalena. I saw her standing at the edge of my bed the following night, soaked in something darker than water, whispering in Latin I didn't understand. They say we are married to Christ, but something else had claimed her, and whatever it wasn't finished. Episode 2, The Candle That Bled. Back washing in RDS. They removed the candles from her cell, all of them. Said it was for safety, but something kept lighting one, only one, every night at the same time. 3:33 a.m. The flame didn't flicker, it pulsed, as if breathing. I watched it through the crack in the wooden door, unable to move. It was like the air inside the room rejected my prayers. The Lord's Prayer stuck in my throat, as if my own faith no longer recognized me. Then the wax began to bleed. Not melt, bleed, thick, wet, and slow. It wound down the candle's side, like veins opening. It dripped in rhythm, 3 drops. Then silence. 3 more. Then a whisper. Eyes were crawled into my ears and refused to leave. Confess. The door creaked open on its own. And there she was again, Sister Magdalena. Her habit was clean now, but her eyes were worse, like dried ink. She didn't move toward me. She only raised a hand and pointed to the candle. Her lips parted, and I braced for a scream. But what came out was worse. My name, spoken in my mother's voice. I ran, I don't know how far, but I remember collapsing near the chapel steps. The older nuns found me shaking, whispering the same thing over and over. She knows my name. The next night, the candle wasn't in her cell. It was in mine, already lit, already bleeding. Episode 3, The NFESSIONAL Without a Priest. By the third night, I stopped sleeping. My bed had turned cold, not just cold hollow, like the grave of someone not quite dead. And every time I blinked, I saw that candle. At 3:33 a.m., the chapel door unlatched itself with a click that echoed like bones snapping. I followed it. I didn't want to, but my legs moved like they no longer belonged to me. Inside the chapel, the confessional box was open. The curtain swayed as if something invisible had just stepped out or in. I whispered, Father, knowing full well no priest stayed in this convent past sunset. There was no answer, just a breath. Not mine. It smelled like dirt and something sweet, like lilies rotting in holy water. I stepped closer. A light flickered inside the booth. A match. No, the same candle. Bleeding. I pushed open the other side and sat where the penitent should sit. The darkness wrapped around me like a wet shroud. Then I heard it, scratching, not outside, inside the wall, clawing upward, like something trying to be born through wood. 10. Confess. Again, her voice, but warped, drenched in echo, multiplied. I began to speak not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My secret spilled out of me like pus from a wound. every sin I bury beneath robes and rosaries, every desire, every doubt. When I finished, I heard a second voice. Mel, she's still listening. Then silence. I tore the curtain open. Empty. No priest. No Sister Magdalena. Only the candle, flickering now, as if satisfied. And as I turned to leave, I saw something written across the wooden booth, scratch deep, freshly carved. NFESSION is not forgiven, Northeast SS. ITS invitation. Episode 4. The prayer that froze the crucifix. It was the first time I had seen the chapel freeze. Not metaphorically, literally. Frost crept up the walls like veins of fear. The windows fogged from the inside out, and the holy water in the font turned to a thin sheet of glass. It was 3:33, and I was praying. I had knelt before the crucifix in desperation, whispering a Latin prayer I didn't fully understand on I had found etched into the margins of an old Bible Sister Magdalena once owned. It spoke of protection, of sealing the soul. I thought I was shielding myself, but when the final word left my lips, Christ's eyes on the wooden crucifix moved. They turned toward me, and the entire statue shuddered and stopped, frowning mid-agony. A tear of ice formed on his cheek. The candle at the altar bled, hissed, and went out. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps against the chapel's back door. No one used that entrance, not since the avalanche blocked it years ago. And yet, the sound came again, 3 knocks, and then a breathy whisper that scraped across the walls. You prayed to be sealed, so I'll close you. The crucifix cracked. A thin line split the wood from shoulder to chest, and the frowning tear, it slid down, then upward, time rewinding itself. I ran to the main doors. They wouldn't open. I turned back to the altar and saw footprints forming in the frost, walking toward me, bare, wet, and slow. And above the altar, hanging where the crucifix once was, Sunday news, empty, waiting. Episode 5. The hymn that SHOULDNTB song. They told us never to sing it, not even hum the melody. The hymn was locked away, its sheet music hidden in a rusted iron box beneath the chapel stairs, sealed with black wax and a note written in Latin, Cantus damnatus, vox tua ab spiritum, the damned song, the voice that opens the soul. But that night, someone sang it. It started low, like a tremor in the stone walls, the kind of song that doesn't rise from the throat, but from the bones. I was gasping, my breath sensing to the rhythm of each cursed word I couldn't understand, but somehow already knew. The hymn pulled me from bed, like a tide pulling a corpse to shore. In that chapel, the walls were weeping. Moisture trickled from the stained glass windows. Every candle had gone out, except one eyes. That candle placed beneath the crucifix, now missing his face. And from the confessional came the song. But there was no singer, just the sound, echoing from the shadows, like the walls themselves had learned how to chant. I should have run. I should have covered my ears. But instead, I walked to the altar and found the iron box wide open. The sheet music gone. The melody seeped into my head like infection. Each note seemed to unravel something inside me, memories. My shame, my voice. I began humming, and the walls answered. The frost cracked, releasing whispers that circled my body like unseen flies. Statues of saints wept dark tears. The floor trembled. Then I saw her. Sister Magdalena stood in the back pew, not rotten, not bleeding, glowing, but not with light, with sound. The hymn poured from her mouth like smoke, and when our eyes met, I realized she wasn't singing to God. She was inviting something through me. I clamped my hands over my mouth. Too late. The tune had taken root. I began to sing, and with every verse, the crucifix above the altar splintered deeper, as if it couldn't bear to hang there any longer. Episode 6. The bell that rang before her death. It rang once, sharp, hollow, out of place. The bell of St. Amaranthus Chapel hadn't worked in years. Rusted ropes, frowning clapper. We prayed by schedule, not by chime, but at exactly 3:33 a.m. It tolled, one note, loud enough to wake every soul in the convent and maybe a few beyond the veil. I sat up in my bed, heart galloping. I wasn't alone. Every sister in the dormitory had risen at once. No one spoke. We all heard it. The bell rang again, and then the scream. Not Sister Magdalena's this time. It was Sister Clara. We found her in the east wing, just outside the bell tower, lying in the narrow hall like she'd been dragged there. Her eyes stared at the ceiling with something more than fear. It was recognition, as if she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to remember. There were no wounds, no signs of attack, only the faint smell of ash, and her hands locked together in prayer. Blood congealed between her knuckles. A single word was scratched into the wall beside her. Mother Louisa ordered us to stay out of the tower. But that afternoon, I went. I had to. The stairs groaned like bones beneath snow. Light barely touched the narrow spiral, but the higher I climbed, the warmer the air became. Not comfortable breath warm, as if someone waited above. The bell chamber was empty, but beneath the great bronze bell, I found a circle of melted wax, and something else, a rosary wrapped tightly around the clapper, cutting into it as though to silence it by force. But the clapper was wet with blood. I turned to leave, and that's when the bell swung. Slowly, creaking, it didn't ring, it whispered. A voice echoed from its hollow chamber. One must die each time it tolls. One must remember. One must sing. I backed away, clutching the rail, and in the distance, I heard them again, growing louder, rising toward the tower. Episode 7, The Nun Who Burned North-East without fire. It was the smell that woke me. Not smoke, not ash, but something close. A scorched sweetness, like burn or clean to cloth. The dormitory was silent to silent. Even the wind outside had stopped whispering. And that's when I saw the scorch marks. They began at Sister Annalise's bed. Curved lines, blackened and curling outward like something had ignited from her core. But her sheets were intact. Her body was not. She lay curled, hands to chest, mouth open in a scream that never came out. Skin unbroken, but her habit had turned to dust at the center, and her eyes were gone. Hollow, not burned, emptied. I fell to my knees, trying to pray. My voice cracked. Then I noticed the wall behind her bed. 7 words had been charred into the stone. She sang the hymn. Now she knows. We weren't supposed to sing it. We weren't supposed to remember it. But it was too late. The melody had nested in our heads. Even the silence now echoed. At the morning meal, no one spoke of her. Her bed was made, her name removed from the prayer roll, as if she had never lived here at all. But I saw the burn on Mother Louisa's wrist, a perfect ring, like where a rosary had once rested. That night, I stayed awake. At 3:33 a.m., I didn't hide. I watched. The candle relit itself. The hymn began to hum from the chapello, trembling, ancient, and down the hallway. The air grew hotter, despite no flame in sight. And there she stood, Sister Magdalena. Her veil was gone. Her skin glowed as if lit from within like a coal that never cracked, only pulsed. She didn't walk. She hovered, a few inches, enough to make the rosary on the wall rattle. She opened her mouth. No voice came out, only heat. My lips cracked, my throat burned, and then I felt it. My sound and my skin was starting to blister. Episode 8, The Bible That Refused to Close. It appeared on my bed, not a dream, not a memory. The Bible I knew, my own copy, the one I had underlined with trembling hands in my early days at St. Amarantha. But it was different now. It breathed. The pages pulsed faintly as if each verse had a heartbeat. The leather cover was wet with something darker than oil, and the bookmark I last left in Psalms now pointed to a passage I didn't recognize. There was no verse number, just a line. He who prays without truth invites the mirror. I tried to shut the book. It wouldn't close. No matter how hard I pressed the cover, the pages resisted like invisible hands helped them open. That's when the wind began, but it didn't come from outside. It blew out of the Bible, a cold, steady stream that whispered as it moved. Not words at first, just sounds, like teeth chattering from beneath the floor. Then a phrase, clear as thunder in my skull. You read what was never written. The ink bled, letters twisted across the page, forming names. Ours, mine, and Sister Magdalena's, written backwards, as if someone had tried to erase her from heaven's record and failed. I screamed. The candle flared and snuffed itself out. In the darkness, the Bible began flipping pages on its own. Each turn sounded like skin tearing. I reached to grab it foolishly and felt heat. Not fire, not warmth, judgment. And when I pulled my hand back, a passage had branded itself into my palm. The soul that lies in prayer shall rise in flames. Suddenly, the chapel bell rang again, once, then again, and I knew someone else was about to die. Episode 9. The eyes behind the Virgin S statue. They always told us not to touch the statue of the Virgin Mary, not because it was sacred but because it was old, fragile, imported from a village in Poland where, rumor had it, all the priests went mad one Lent and sang the Gloria backward. But no one warned us about her eyes. I noticed it during morning prayer. The statue's face so serene, so holy, was tilted slightly lower than I remembered. Her gaze, once lifted toward heaven, now pointed straight at me. I blinked. She didn't. That night, I returned alone, guided by something I couldn't name. The chapel was colder than usual, the air still heavy from the previous night's bell toll. I approached the statue slowly, her porcelain skin glowed faintly under the moonlight slipping through the stained glass. Then I saw it, movement, behind her eyes, like something living inside the statue was watching, pushing forward, stretching the thin ceramic from within. Her eyelids fluttered as if in sleep or trance. I fell to my knees, frowning, and then she wept. Not tears, blood, just slow trails, red and thick, crept down her cheeks and pooled at her feet. My body locked, my lungs stopped, and behind me, the Bible I had thrown across the pew earlier that day cracked open on its own. The same passage burned on the page. He who prays without truth invites the mirror. Then her lips parted, not in mercy, in imitation, as if mimicking my own horrified expression. I turned to run, but a whisper slithered through the air. She sees what God refuses to. I looked back. The Virgin's mouth had closed, but the eyes still moved, and I realized it wasn't Mary looking out from that statue anymore. Episode 10. The choir that sang without tongues. There hadn't been music in the convent for weeks, not since Sister Magdalena died, not since the hymn, but on the 10th night, the silence broke. It started as a low murmur like humming underwater. It came from the chapel, echoing down the corridor like a memory trying to crawl back into flesh. I followed it, heart pounding like footsteps behind me. The chapel doors were open. Inside, the choir loft was filled with shadows. Not shapes, not people, shadows, all seated, all still, but their mouths moved in unison. No voice came out, just the horrible sound of breath being borrowed. Inhale, exhale, The closer I stepped, the more I realized these figures weren't just shadows. They were the missing nuns. Sister Clara, Sister Annalise, Sister Teresa, all gone, all presumed buried, now seated in the choir loft, heads swaying gently, faces pale and mouths open impossibly wide, and none of them had tongues. Just black, hollow caverns where some used to live. Their eyes turned to me in perfect unison, and the melody shifted into something sharp, a piercing vibration that struck straight into my spine. The hymn, twisted, reversed, sung through silence. The crucifix above the altar cracked again. The air felt thick, like a chapel drowning in invisible water. I clutched my rosary, but it was warm to warm, and when I looked down, the beads had melted into my skin. I tried to scream. No sound came, and then I felt it, something behind me, breathing into my neck, mimicking the choir's rhythm. I turned. No one, just Sister Magdalena's veil, floating midair, as if she were singing too, but not with her voice, with mine. Episode 11. The bed that remembered every death. I begged for a different bed. After Sister Magdalena, after Annalise, after Clara, each of them had died in the same dormitory, and each night, someone else's mattress seemed to breathe, moan, remember, but no one listened. At Saint Amarantha, silence had become obedience. That night, I lay stiff in bed, afraid to blink. The air was dry, but the sheets clung to me like damp skin. Then 3:33, the minute that didn't belong to God. The bed creaked, not from my movement. From beneath me, I turned my head slowly, and I saw it, the indentation. Something invisible was lying next to me. The mattress dipped with a weight that wasn't mine. I dared not breathe. My rosarno fused to my wrist tightened, and then I heard it, a whisper, so close I felt the heat of it against my cheek. She never left. I bolted upright, but the shape was still there, outlined against the sheets. Pressed into the pillow, I reached with trembling fingers and touched the fabric. It was warm, like flesh. I ripped off the blanket. No body, but the mattress was soaked in blood, not fresh old, dried, soaked deep into the peg, and carved into the wooden headboard. I found tally marks, 13, and one more, half scratched, waiting to be finished. My name was written beneath it, in my own handwriting. I had written it, but I would, because the bed remembers, and it was remembering me. Episode 12. The room that northeast had a door. It was Sister Louisa who whispered about it first. We don't clean it, we don't enter it, we don't even speak of it unless it speaks first. A room at the end of the east wing, no door, no handle, just a wall with paint older than memory and a shadow that didn't belong to the hallway. I only noticed it the night after the bed bled. Something pulled me down the corridor, not by hand, but by memory. I didn't remember walking, but there I stood, breathless, facing that stretch of wall as if I'd always known it hid something. At 3:33, the air around it shifted, grew heavy, and the wall breathed, yes, in and out, like a lung trying to remember how to scream. Then I saw a outline, faint, but undeniable. A door had once been there, still was, just not for eyes. I raised my palm and pressed it to the surface. Warm, it opened, not with hinges, not with sound, but with surrender. The wall dissolved into mist, revealing a room swallowed in shadow and hymns that played backward. Candles floated in midair, dripping upward, and on the far wall, a mirror shattered, but reflecting one thing clearly, me, but not as I was. I wore Magdalena's veil. My skin was ash, my eyes were hollow, and I was smiling. Then, the reflection moved without me. It raised its hand, pointed to the floor, where a circle of rosaries had been laid burned into the wood. I stepped back, and the room spoke, not with voice, but with mine. One more death, and the song ends, or begins. The wall sealed shut, and behind it, I heard the bed creak. Episode 13. The Bell Tower that Undead Souls. I thought I knew the bell tower, but I had never climbed it alone, not after dark, not after what the choir had become. Yet something in me, maybe what was left of me, needed to know why the bell had rung 13 times since Magdalena died, and why it always stopped on the breath before the 14th. I climbed the spiral stairwell barefoot, candle in hand. Each step creaked as if reluctant to carry me. The earth and the higher I went, and the scent burnt wax and ancient dust grew thicker. At the top, the great bronze bell loomed, silent, still, but beneath it, rows of tally marks carved deep into the stone floor. 13. And now, freshly etched in blood-red ink, not paint was my name. Before I could run, the door slammed shut behind me. The flame of my candle extinguished itself, and from the shadows above, the bell shifted. It began to swing, but made no sound. Instead, it exhaled, a deep, hollow breath that smelled of confession and rot. The ropes lifted without hands. The clapper floated as if strung by invisible strings. Then I saw them, faces, etched into the bronze, twisting, screaming, praying. Every soul the bell had ever counted, and mine was forming. With eyes wide open, I screamed. No one heard. Then came the voice in it from the bell, but from the void behind it. Each ring weighs a soul, each soul ends a song. The bell swung once more, and this time, it rang, louder than thunder, deeper than death. The 14th chime. Episode 14. The nun who spoke with no mouth. They found me in the bell tower at dawn, curled, silent, eyes wide open, lips unmoving. I tried to scream, to speak, to pray, that my mouth refused. Not sealed shut, not sewn, just gone, as if my voice had been plucked from my body and stored elsewhere. The sisters wept, said I was in shock, but I knew the truth. The bell had taken something, and it had given it to her. Because that night, Sister Magdalena returned. But this time, she spoke. The first words came not from her mouth but from the walls, whispered into every corridor, every pillow, every prayer. She rang the bell. She is ours. And then, in the chapel, her figure appeared, body flickering like flame in stained glass. Her face was no longer hollow. It was mine. She turned toward the altar, and the toward those tongueless, dead-eyed nuns stood behind her, singing, no voices, just echoes, and from my mouth, though I didn't open either, him poured out. I was her vessel now, a mouth without control, a soul half-possessed. Mother Louisa tried to exorcise me, but when she placed the crucifix to my chest, it melted, not from heat, from rejection. She cannot be saved, said the voice from the mirror. She chose to hear, and perhaps I did. Perhaps part of me always wanted to know what Magdalena knew. Now I carry it, the silence, the hymn, a curse, and every night, at 3:33, I open a mouth that isn't mine, and speak. Episode 15, the last prayer before the washing. LLSLLAPSE. I used to think prayer was protection. Now, it's a trigger. The final night began with silence, but not the kind you pray for. It was the silence that listens, that waits, that knows you're about to beg for mercy. At 3:33, the hymn began without a sound. I felt it in my bones before I heard it. The walls of St. Amarantha breathed in unison. Stones shifted, rosaries rattled, and then the statues began to cry. Not blood, not wax, but dust, as if they were eroding from the inside. The chapel doors burst open without touch, and I was drawn into the sanctuary. There, the choir stood for the last time. No faces, no tongues, just the presence of those who had given themselves to the song. And in the center, Sister Magdalena waited, or what she had become. She wore a crown of broken thorns and robes made of torn scripture. Her eyes bled light, and behind her, the mirror from the doorless room floated in midair, reflecting not us but what watched us. The walls groaned, cracks swept across the marble floor, and from the bell tower, the 14th chime rang again. This time, it split the air. Mother Louisa stepped forward, shaking, crying. She tried one last prayer. Deliver us, O Lord, from the crucifix above the altar shattered, and the walls collapsed inward, not with stone, with memory. Each scream, each death, each prayer spoken without faith poured into the chapel, flooding it with echoes. I fell to my knees, knowing it was over. Then, I saw her, not Magdalena, me, standing calmly in the center of the chaos, eyes closed, mouth open, singing the hymn. And as the last wall fell, and the moonlight swallowed everything, I prayed one final time, not to be saved, but to forget.